Season 4 finale starts now.
BJ Nix, are you here?
Present.
Present. Spoonie, Timothy Spoonie.
Present, sir.
Margaret and Mary. Do we have a Margaret and Mary?
Yes. And the margaritas.
All right. Class here. We're ready. Let's go.
Yes, let's go.
Okay.
This is the time to line up behind your team, to support your team. Have faith in that team.
You know, it's peaks and valleys. You know, it can't always be good. And as I always tell people, you're never as good as you think you are, and you're never as bad as you think you are. But when we do know about
house call, Trevon Diggs, pick six. It's coming. They see it. Knocked away. Oh, Gregory. Hurts in trouble. 3 Cowboys wrap him up, make it 4. Micah Parsons is unblockable.
What's going on, Cowboys Nation? Ladies and gentlemen, you're now tuned into the Pick 6 Sports live show and Season 4 finale, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen. Season 4 finale. The Cowboys made it to the divisional round, and they couldn't get any further. So we're here tonight to lay to rest the 22 season, peek over the hedges, the valleys to some things. Because, I mean, we've had a lot of stuff happen since the last time we've talked to y'all. There's been a lot of activity with the Cowboys for sure that we get to talk about that's going to lead into the 23 season. So we're here to put it to bed. Season 4, Spoonie. I know you're a little under the weather. How we doing outside of that, my guy?
Doing good. You know, it's we didn't get what we wanted for the playoffs, but you know, that came to an end. But sometimes the good things, to reach the good things that we want, you get a fresh start. And with all the announcements these last 2 weeks, this could be a very good fresh start for the new Dallas Cowboy team moving forward. So I'm very excited about it, and I'm great to see what you got for football, you know, things like that. So
10-4. Oh, we're wrapping up Season 4, man. Dadgummit. How you feeling on this Wednesday, brother?
I mean, I feel basically how you'd expect right now. Like, a little bit sad, but there's some excitement in the air with some coaching moves that may or may not have happened that we're going to talk about. And this draft season, like, forget 2022. I'm already in 2023 draft mode. I'm just grinding film, talking players and prospects that I like, and, you know, paying attention to the Senior Bowl. We got the Shrine Bowl tomorrow and all that. I did want to say really quickly, because shout out to our guy. Let me make sure I get his name right. Quinn Cooley said, I got to be a guest for once. We do that every Friday. So tune in on Friday nights. It's our Freestyle Friday show. You can there's a link that's always tagged at the top, pinned at the top, I should say. Just click it and join. So if you ever want to be a guest, every Friday night you have the opportunity.
And you got to get off Facebook to do it. You got to be on the YouTube channel. That's where the link is on Friday. So come up to our Friday show on YouTube, Pick 6 Sports. Hit the link and you come up here for sure. Let's say to me, Rowe. This guy. with the burner account. But with that being said, I don't think we need to cover too much as a couple of weeks have passed now. I don't think we really need to go too much into the Niners game. I think it just is what it is at this point. We've moved on. But I do want to kind of cover just in general what this Cowboys team accomplished, because we kind of go back in the preseason and training camp and our thoughts and ideas. Like, I know for me, I picked this team to be 10-7. And after the preseason kind of came and went, I was like, I'm kind of feeling it's 10-7. Hey, they found a way, even with Dak Prescott missing 5 games, to go 12-5, and they had a playoff win for the first time underneath Mike McCarthy. So it's not all a wash. It's not all a wash. I know a lot of Cowboys Nation, as we've been into the space realm in the Twitterverse, deservedly upset, which is fair. But I think to a certain extent for us tonight, though, I want to highlight some of the good stuff. And look, there's some bad to be talked about within there too. But I do want to highlight, because I think the expectations going into this season very much were, hey, this is a setup to get Mike McCarthy up out of here and get Sean Payton in. Oh,
I mean, this season, it's hard to feel excited about things that happen, because we're in the same position that we did not want to be in. And a lot of the same things that were highlighted all season long, there were issues for the Cowboys, all emerged and showed their ugly heads at the same time, which sucks. But yeah, we're in the same situation now. The media is already saying, Mike McCarthy's a lame duck coach. Same exact storyline as last year, but now Sean Payton is out of the equation. So we'll see if now it's, he's just keeping the seat warm for DQ, or if there's another name that emerges or whatever. But here we are.
Yeah. And interesting enough, Jerry did say today, I feel like I got 2 head coaches talking about DQ and Mike McCarthy, but neither here nor there. Spoonie, once again, though, as we were doing and we were going through this thing and looking into the season, how this was going to project. And again, not the ultimate result that we were looking for. I'm just trying to get to the NFC Championship game. Yeah, the Super Bowl's great, but I'm just trying to get back to an NFC Championship game. They came up 4 quarters short, obviously. But it wasn't all bad, but bad enough where we're seeing some changes. But, the team surprised me, and I think it really kind of speaks to Mike McCarthy and him changing the culture and what he's doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I understand with some of these networks, Super Bowl. Listen, you only get one winner. The most important thing is having a team to be put together to be able to compete for one every year, every single year. That's what it's for. That's what's important. Be able to compete every year for that championship run. And the thing is, what I'm happy about and a lot excited for is that I can say that we are a playoff contending team. Why? Because we won 2 years in a row. And that's the type of culture that Mike McCarthy has set on this team since coming in here. As fans, we haven't seen it, we haven't been part of something like this in a long time. The thing is, right now, we all know a couple of pieces, a couple of changes, we could definitely reach that top of the mountain where that's the goal. And what I'm excited for is that I know he was all worried about Dan Quinn. He's coming back. That was right there. It's off to a great start. Kellen Moore. I know a lot of us got mixed feelings about Kellen Moore, but you know what? Sometimes you just need a change. Mike McCarthy is getting that key to open up any door he wants to allow anybody coming here on this team to improve this team. So these are the things that we have wanted. We're seeing it. Of course, it's a process. It takes its time, but it's a start, and I'm happy about it.
Yeah. Even this defense, though, and we wasn't sure what this defense is going to be able to do this year, right after having 34 turnovers, and came back with another 32, and the pressure got a little bit better, and ultimately Dan Quinn's coming back. So again, to uplift spirits after everything we've been through, just certain things we can kind of look at them and say, look, even though each season isn't different, there's some things maybe to hang the hat for here in 23.
Yeah, well, the defense, like you mentioned, that's one thing that if you look historically, takeaways are extremely volatile. Like, you very rarely see a team consistently take the ball away, especially at a high rate. Like, it's not uncommon to have a 30 takeaway season and then maybe like a 22 or 23, which is still pretty good. But having back-to-back 30 plus is crazy. And what was the stat? Like, the last team to do that was the Steelers in 75, 76 or something like that. So it kind of paints the picture for you on how uncommon that is. So that was great. we did see some guys on the defensive side of the ball step up, like Deron Bland. I think he's probably one of the best stories that the Cowboys had this year, because he was a guy that myself and a lot of people were not super excited about, because you're looking at the cornerback room before the season starts and you're like, well, I know we have Diggs, we have Brown, we have Lewis, we have a second round pick and a third round pick from the year previously. Like, where does he fit in this equation? And the talk when he was drafted was, well, he could be a safety too. And then we're like, okay, well, let's talk about the safety room. Where does he fit? And we found out, due to injury and, you know, our hand being forced a little bit, that the dude's a baller. He was really good. So that was exciting to see. And we got to see him play inside and outside. And there were quite a few guys that we saw step up and elevate their game. And then there were some guys, unfortunately, on the other side of the stick that we were excited about, like Neville Gallimore. Like, he was the guy we were thinking, you know, he's going to emerge. He has Osa opposite of him, Bohanna, and obviously we made the addition later on with Hankins. But there's better players in the defensive room. Like, this should allow him to shine, and unfortunately it just didn't happen. And then Kelvin Joseph, you know, the opportunity was there. He had the chance to walk through the door and didn't do it. Maybe year 3 we'll see some growth, but there were some disappointments. But overall, on the defensive side of the ball, the defense held their end of the bargain more often than not. There was definitely a stretch in the second half of the season where they weren't playing quite up to the standard they showed in the first half of the season. But when you look at the defense, the way that they ranked in terms of takeaways, third down conversion percentage allowed, red zone percentage allowed, things like that, like some important milestone metrics, the defense was pretty good. So that was good to see back-to-back years.
Yeah, the answer of the question here, Bland was not the coup pick. That was the right tackle, left tackle, Belitsico, was the pick there for the Amari Cooper pick. You know, and then too, you know, a lot of people after the draft, you know, Tyler Smith, a little bummed about, you know, what was on the board at the time and getting Tyler Smith and how he's able to produce. He had his rookie moments, obviously, but showed, you know, walked through that door. Looks like we have the future set there at left tackle. And then the other side too, man, how about these young tight ends, Spoonie? These young tight ends and look, Ferguson we knew about. Hendershot, like we knew about Hendershot. We're like, well, what is he really going to bring to the table? And he had moments as well. So, you know, offensively there was some nice surprises here from these young guys that came on board for 22.
Yeah, listen, you know, the next, especially with the next man approach, they had to fill in these roles. Hendershot, Ferguson, I remember I was at the New York Giants game. That's the game where they had a lot more on playing time. I'd be so missed that game. And I recall that when I was on my way home from Jersey, and I remember it was you Professor O, and yourself, and Mendoza. And it was funny because the whole offseason, BJ wanted to, talking about tight ends, BJ was high on Ferguson, Mendoza and Professor O was very high on Hendershot, and going further where, you know, he may slip, you know, Indiana, right? Indiana? So right. He may slip for certain reason. And I'm like, you know what's so funny? They were going back and forth, you know, breaking things down, and we got both those motherfuckers on this team. And, you know, it is one of those things where, if you know, and I tell everybody this, I don't need to subscribe to other draft content or whatever. I got it for free in front of Professor O, BJ Nix, Mendoza, Deacon Dom. You know, it's when you get when the debates go on during the off season, and I'm like, look at the results, look at the plays on this team that these guys have talked about. It's like, wow, but I can't wait for it. I know there's a lot of guys on everybody's draft board, you know, a lot of pet cats that we all like, that we all want to see on this team. But I will say this: going back with these tight ends, going back with the coaching change. What I love the most is that we didn't do well in the past. Was that the next man approach works here? They get the right type of guys to fill in these roles the best way they can, and the results was a W. So, and again, we have a situation, a question about Schultz. Mm-hmm. Will he be back with this team? And, you know, of course, now we could feel good to say, hey, if he's not here, we got Hendershot, we got Ferguson, Sean McKeon. So, you know, I'm happy about it. I'm just glad where we at right now moving forward.
No doubt. And how about one time for Tyler Biadasz, who just got added to the Pro Bowl as well? Big question mark going into this season, right? I mean, even at the draft, Stephen Jones talking about it's open competition. We were here banging the table like, man, we hope it's open competition. He has to take a step forward. And what a great season for him and really walking through that door this 22 season.
Yeah, I mean, things that we complained about last year or had questions, like if you remember the first 6 weeks of the season last year, we're like, this dude can't even shotgun snap. Like, it's all over the place. Dak's reaching for balls like constantly. It's messing up, the cadence and things like that. That wasn't an issue all season long. There were some questions on, is he really good enough moving in space? Like, how does he look when he pulls and screens and things like that? Now, I understand, Cowboys Nation. We're still not a good screen team. But that's not Tyler Biadasz' fault. He did a good job in space, or at least a better job in space than what I was expecting. So it was nice. It was definitely nice because Tyler Linderbaum was the talk of the Cowboys Nation last year. Like, do you spend a first-round pick on a center? He's a beast. What can he do for the offensive line? And Biadasz was pretty good. So that was definitely one of the bright spots.
Yeah. Learned a lot about Steele as well with him going to the restricted free agent path this year. We hate to see the injury, but we saw definitely the drop once he was out with the run game. So there's some fairly young guys across the line that we feel pretty good about. Hopefully he bounces back very quickly from his injury in that scope. Some down parts, right? Tolbert. But we tried. It didn't come to fruition. But I am intrigued because I feel like I kind of go back and look at what happened at South Alabama and think about this West Coast offense. I think year two it's going to help him. I'm not saying he's going to come out here and be this ultimate playmaker all of a sudden, like, oh, why was he playing last year or things of that nature. But I think this scheme that's coming in will help Tolbert some. Do you buying that? Going back to our draft work on him last year.
I mean, I can't imagine it hurting. Like, the Cowboys coaching staff has been pretty candid about what happened in the front office as too with Jalen Tolbert is he played a very defined role at South Alabama, and obviously that's not like a Power 5 school. So the level of competition and what he was being asked to do in the offense compared to an NFL offense was a huge step up. And some players, doesn't matter if they're in a Power 5 or not, can join an NFL team and quickly pick up on it, and some players can't. And for him, I think he was struggling to learn the terminology and learn the nuance of route running in the NFL because it's a lot tougher. And just to kind of simplify things for those that may watch college football but not really pay too much attention, the hash marks in college football are wider than they are in the NFL. Why that matters is that means the wide side of the field in college is much wider than it is in the NFL. So you have more space to get open. You have more wiggle room and ability to make plays at wide receiver, especially if you're split out wide or in the slot closer to the sideline versus what you have in the NFL. So the field shrinks because the hash marks are shrunk. So if you run a slant or something like that or a shallow cross, there's a linebacker in your face a lot quicker than they are in college. So having a little bit less of that field can mess with players and make it difficult. And he's said as much himself that even small things like that kind of threw him off. And they were asking him to play a lot of positions. He wasn't just X. We need you to be the Y and Z. We're going to put you in motion. We're going to have you in the slot. You're going to play a lot of different things than what you did in college. And unfortunately, the learning curve for him was just higher than what he was able to do. So maybe coming into this year with the ability to kind of reset, recalibrate himself, work with some wide receiver coaches, because that's what a lot of these guys do too. Like CeeDee Lamb took a huge step forward this year. He's working with Delphonte Diamond, who's one of the best wide receiver coaches. You see like Des Bryant with David Robinson and obviously the offensive lineman with Duke Manyweather. There's a lot of specialists that can help these guys get up to speed quicker, and hopefully he puts in the work to do that, and I'm sure he will. But to answer your question, in West Coast offense, which is what Mike McCarthy's historically run, it's not asking as much from the wide receivers because you're running a lot of slants, you're running shallow crossing routes, posts, things like that. So it's a lot of in-breaking routes. There are some things like comebacks and stuff like that, but it's a pretty straightforward route tree where the whole idea is timing-based, get you in space, make a play, yards after catch. So a younger wide receiver should be able to assimilate to that pretty quick.
And we hope. Now, Dallas still need to go add somebody in this offseason trade, free agency, and probably still draft a guy. But I think it definitely does help his cause going into year two. the running back situation here this year, and we kind of saw it play out. We finally, after us begging the table wherever, Pollard, we finally got to see Tony Pollard get unleashed. Unfortunately, the injury in San Francisco with the fibula and the high ankle sprain. And now, in true Cowboys fashion, we finally use him. He gets injured, and, it's payday. As we're looking right now, the franchise tag for a running back, I believe, is $10.9 million is where it's at. And then on the back end, you got Zeke and where he's at. And let me pause real quick. As I put out one of my guys here that I'm pretty big on, with the fullback coming back with the West Coast offense, and I know, you love this guy from North Dakota State too as well. Stop telling me Zeke's a fullback, ladies and gentlemen. Stop doing that. I had a lot of people on there, just make Zeke the fullback. No, Zeke is not a fullback, okay? It's not. So, we need to get a fullback and make that happen. But with that being said,
real quick, for people that maybe don't understand that because they did see Zeke in situational, why do you think he could not be a fullback long term? What's the difference of what a true fullback does versus what they may have seen Zeke do 15 times last year?
Yeah, and the big thing there is simply Zeke in pass protection. So you feel pretty good about his blocking. That's not going up and taking a linebacker in the hole one-on-one. That's not getting on the edge out here and getting a block out there in space and clearing lanes. So while Zeke is a decent pass blocking running back, he's not big enough to take on linebackers all the time. He's just not. Now, I mean, if he wants to rebuild his body in the offseason, Hail Mary this thing, maybe, but just the way he's built, period, and what he's asked to do from his blocking style is not conducive to what a fullback would be if you go doubt what the West Coast is going to be, lining up at different positions, getting in the hole, digging out, as they call it, digging out that linebacker out of the hole to create that crease within space. So, yeah, I mean, Zeke's a great short yardage running back, right? He has a nose for the end zone in those situations, or the short convert for firsts. Okay, it's third and, say, 6, 7, 8. You need him to block. Yes, he can do those things. It's not what a fullback's going to have to get out here and do a little bit more of the dirty work, getting in those holes and digging out those linebackers. And look, and sometimes they just linebackers are fullbacks. Sometimes it'll be, because we're going to go to a zone blocking scheme, sometimes it's going to be them coming up on the side of a left guard or a right guard here and help them double team real quick on a defensive tackle and then peel and go deep afterwards. So Zeke's just not built to be able to do those things.
And another thing to throw into it too, Mike McCarthy's scheme features fullbacks in the passing game.
That part.
Zeke's not a great receiving back. He can catch the ball in dump offs and stuff, but you can find better fullback options.
Yeah. I mean, look, they kept throwing the ball anyways. for what it's worth, it just wasn't very good returns for Zeke. I think early in his career, though, he had moments in certain things, but our screen games just went so trash. Not that, and to your point, in McCarthy's scheme with the passing, yeah, there's routes being ran by those guys. Specifically, you see some fullback wheel routes, but nobody here ever wanted a wheel route from anybody all season at all. We saw when we was in the group chat, oh my God, they ran a wheel route. It works. Crazy. So, interesting times there. So, again, though, what are we going to do here, though? Jerry Stephen came out and spoke about the contract and what's going on. They want him back, but they talked about the money. Zeke hasn't lost a step according to Steven.
At the same time, the organization moved on from Kellen Moore and had nothing but glowing reviews to say about Kellen Moore.
It's true.
But then said, we thought we could go different directions. I think that's what they're doing is Zeke's been one of their guys. They want to protect him. They don't want to throw him under the bus and be like, yeah, he's washed. Obviously, we can't pay him that much money. So there's coded language.
Mm-hmm. There's
hidden messages there when they're saying things like, yeah, we have all the confidence in the world. We'd love to have Zeke back, but it has to be at the right price. That's one of those statements where they tell you everything after but or everything before but doesn't matter. That's what's happening there. The reality is if Zeke were to say, I'd play for veteran minimum, they would definitely keep him if he did a pay cut like that. But there's no way he's going to do that.
Right.
So the question is, if Zeke's cap hit drops to $7 million, would you want him? Probably not. If it drops to $5 million, would you want him? I don't think they would. I think they'd rather have the cap space. So in reality, I can't imagine that he actually is back this year. It would have to be a hell of a contract reduction for that to take place.
Yeah, I don't think
yeah.
he's back.
And Spoon, here's the other side to it, because now are you going to tag Pollard? Are you going to let Pollard walk? Are you going to let both these guys walk out of the building? Where because you got to handle the Zeke situation with the contract, and now you got Pollard here available for a contract here now, being a free agent. So where do you land? What do you think they'll do here?
You see, the popular answer would be keep Pollard. You got Malik Davis, and if you could draft a running back, if you feel like you could draft one. The Spoony ones, what I'm thinking is, let them both walk. That's just me. Let them both walk. I understand the move will be on Robinson out of Texas. I like that. I like Jameer Gibbs out of Alabama. Reminds me a little bit of Cook, a little bit of Kamara.
It's a deep draft for running back. Yeah, it's a deep draft for running back.
There was something that Professor O said. I remember it was in a chat or somewhere, but it really hit me hard. And it was on the lines of Michael Gallup. You got him on a discount, but he's not 100% healthy. Look what happened. It slowed his offense down. I don't want to play. I'm not a doctor. I can't say that don't worry, Paulo will be healed 100% to his old self. At the same time, what if he's not? What if he takes a step back and we just paid him? For me, I'd rather go free. Not just me.
Okay. Are you bringing Pollard back? Or are you just wiping the board here at the running back position here? Outside, Malik Davis will be here, obviously, but.
So I'm pretty firmly you don't pay running backs big money. I would negotiate with Tony Pollard. I would not franchise him. I don't want him at $10 million a year. I don't want him with a contract with an AAV of over $10 million a year. But if I was able to get him for like $6 million, $7 million, I'd be interested at that point. I don't know if he would want that because he's coming off the best year of his career. He just got injured. When you get an injury like that, especially in a big moment, your football mortality can kind of kick in a little bit. You're like, I need to get paid. I need to protect myself. I haven't made a lot of money so far. Obviously, compared to normal people, it's good money. But in terms of what NFL players are capable of making and somebody at his level, he could make more money in the second contract. So I'm sure he's going to ask for more. If it was Austin Eckler money, which was $8 million a year or less, I'm interested and would definitely talk that. Anything above that, I'll just let him walk. And somebody in the chat mentioned you could get a third-round pick for him. You probably could get a third or fourth-round comp pick for him if you just let him walk. So that's probably what I'm going to do. I'm just not paying $10 million for him as much as I like him.
Exactly.
Dangerous game, considering, how outside of CeeDee Lamb, he was probably your biggest weapon. Those two guys were your biggest weapons. Now this thing is getting a little remodeled, if you will, with the offense because of the turnover of Kellen Moore, a lot of the coaches on the offensive side, a lot of free agents here, and instituting, and a lot of times too, when you're instituting a new system, which it looks like it's going to be the West Coast, Mike McCarthy's going to call the plays. Sometimes you like to have the freedom to go out here and get the guys you want for the system. So, yeah, it's very interesting what they're going to do with Pollard. 10.9 for the tag, I think is too much. I just, I think that's just too much because you got to go do some things at the wide receiver position prior to the draft. I think that matters tremendously here for where this Cowboys team is headed. So, I agree. 6 to 8 million. Talk to me. And I love Zeke, and I think Zeke does a hell of a job here, and he's been fantastic for this organization. The fastest running back of all time to get to 10,000 yards. Don't care who your favorite running back is. That's him. He's not going to come back for $2 million a year. No. He's not coming back for $2 million a year, and I don't know if the Cowboys are going to do. I don't think the Cowboys are interested in giving him $5 million, right? So, I hate to see the 2-1-4 get broken up, but it kind of feels like it's trending that way. I think we'll know sooner than later on both these guys, to be honest with you. And kind of one of the things we've seen so far since the end of the season, the Cowboys are moving with a little bit more purpose. All right, we're going to move on for Kellen Moore. All right, we got the offensive line coach in here. It seems like they're moving with a little bit more purpose early on here in this offseason. Now, we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, that's going to – obviously one of the first things to fall here with this building of the team for 23, right, is going to be how they handle the running back room moving forward. I tell you what, man, it was – I still go back to if Paul doesn't get hurt. I still think to beat San Francisco. I just think if Paul doesn't get hurt to beat San Francisco. That's always going to stick with me about this season for sure. Is that moment, But ultimately, how it went down led us to, and now we can kind of get into the Kellen Moore mutual non-whatever, however that worked out. Whatever did happen. And we were talking in the spaces and whatnot leading up to seeing if he was going to get released or not. And that last space we ran that Friday before he was actually released on Sunday, or mutually parted. And, I said 60%. The one thing that kind of stuck in my head was after week 1 and him saying, I don't like option routes. And he was talking about how you got to get Pollard involved. And we saw those things kind of happening in general. And I was like, it feels like, and especially coming off of his press conference Thursday, I'm like, I think this thing is over. It's kind of where I'm at. Y'all were kind of in the same boat too. It happened. Let me ask y'all, because as you brought it up earlier, we talked about the beginning of this season, right? This was a setup, lame duck coach to try to get Sean Payton in here. The season came and went. Now some of the same narratives are happening. Oh, well, now it's all on him, and he's the play caller. I don't see it that way, personally. I don't. I think I'm seeing a coach who's been here for 3 years, and I think he's changing the culture, is what I think. I don't think this is Dan Quinn's in the wings here, and he's going to get all these guys and then move on. If it doesn't work this year, then he's got to go. I don't see it that way. Spoonie, is that how you see it? Oh, and then I'll get an O afterwards.
No, I don't see it that way at all. There's a reason why Dan Quinn came back. It's nothing reported, but it's just a feel that, he believes in where this team is going. He's having fun doing it. He believes where this team can do when they get the right pieces done, and that's basically what it is. Dan Quinn is getting to coach a defense. He's not being nobody's above him or X, Y, Z. He has that trust. He's being paid as a head coach, or just being a defensive coordinator. When it comes to McCarthy, he's basically taking the coach. He has shown, listen, I have did it with you guys' ways for the first couple of years. Look at the results, right? I think this season, even from the playoff, everything was going so good that it just put out what's the thing that needs to be changed. That's what happened. So it's like everything is covered, but now we can see what the issue was at, and they addressed it. This is what we've been screaming about the whole time, and we're seeing the coaching changing. We've been seeing them now McCarthy's being as the head guy in as far as the coaching staff, which is great, because at the end of the day, when it boils down to it, McCarthy should have been doing the play call since day one. He's the head coach. Since day one, he tried it their way. Now it's his way. And I think moving forward, I know Jerry could sell a lot of comments, but to say that he wants McCarthy here for as long as like Tom Landry comment, I think he's being very real about it. Let's be honest. McCarthy's gone. What else is out there? Can't say Sean Payton no more. What else is out there? So and I think McCarthy has proved that he's a qualified coach moving forward. So he's here.
Okay. Do you think this is he's in trouble year, or how do you view the moves that they're doing here now that they moved on from Kellen Moore and kind of that regime, and even Newsomire and those guys, and where they're currently at? Is Mike McCarthy going into this thing right now in the hot seat to you, or?
I don't think he is going into the season, but we all know how things go in football. Like, if things go off the rails, it could be his last year, but if things are status quo, we win double-digit games, make it to the playoffs, etc. It's kind of hard to say that he's a lame duck coach going into the season. And in terms of him calling the plays, I don't think that's a desperation move. And frankly, it's something I think a lot of us have asked for various parts of the last 3 years. Like, I know last year in the second half of the season, when the Broncos came out there saying, we put the blueprint out for the Cowboys, blah, 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 blah. And we could not beat that. Teams kept doing the same exact looks as the season went on. We're like, okay, Mike, at this point, it's time for you to either up the level of influence you have in this offensive scheme, or frankly, just take it over. And I was at the point late in the year last year, I was like, all right, just take over play calling. Forget Kellen Moore. He can just learn and mentor whatever. He can assist you with game planning, but it's time for you to do this. So I definitely think a scheme change and scheme overhaul was needed. And that's kind of, I don't mean to give excuses for Kellen Moore, but if you know a certain scheme and it's what you're comfortable with, asking you, and you being Kellen Moore in this situation, to completely adapt and change and overhaul your playbook is probably a tough ask. But Mike McCarthy knows the West Coast offense. It's what he grew up in. It's what he ran successfully. It's what he had his coaches, after he relinquished play calling abilities, continue to do. So he's a West Coast guy, and you have Kellen who runs a different philosophy. So there's always going to be that rub there. So I definitely think it's in our best interest to make the move. Hopefully all works out well for Kellen, but works better for us, right? That's what we're looking for here.
Right.
But I do think, Dak Prescott and Kellen Moore probably reached the level of where they could get together. And again, that's not always a direct reflection of the ability or inability of somebody to do their job, but that happens. Sometimes your coworkers are like, man, they were doing great year after year, and then like year 6, they just kind of plateaued and never got better again. Or that kid that you played football with or basketball growing up, where you're like, they're a beast. They made the all-star team every year, and then they hit 13, and they just kind of, leveled out and never got better. At that point, you have to say, is basketball for me? Do I need to work harder? Do I need to do something differently to continue my elevation? And for Kellen and Dak, it just wasn't there anymore. All that said, we still were successful offensively, but I definitely think there was areas of opportunity in terms of getting receivers in space, making things easier for the quarterback, opening up things in the run game so it's a little bit less predictable and things like that the West Coast influence is going to definitely help with. And we don't even know who the offensive coordinator is yet either. We do know Mike's going to call plays, but we don't know what that person's role is going to be or what philosophies they're going to have added to that equation too. So what we saw Mike run in 2014 and 2010 is probably not going to look at all like what we're seeing now, but there will definitely be elements and influences of that.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing I've talked about since they moved on. Sometimes a coach just runs its course with the organization. I mean, and like the message gets stale, things happen, and it's better to part ways than to keep banging your head against the wall. And I think that's just what happened here. I don't think that Kellen Moore is going to go on and just be this terrible offensive coordinator the rest of, or that he was a terrible offensive coordinator. I don't think that's the thing there. I think it's just what was going on here. It was time for a change. And to me, when I talk about Mike McCarthy, and I don't think it's the situation where he's going to be on the hot seat. I mean, there's always if it goes really left and whatever, but prototypically when an organization decides to make wholesale changes to the identity of their offense, it's for multiple years. It's not for one season and then, okay, never mind, this ain't worked and we're getting rid of everybody. That's how I look at it. And what Mike McCarthy's shown and done so far, I don't expect him to go in here next year and lose games and stuff kind of go left on him. So, I just don't see it that way. I mean, things can change. Hey, as the star turns, y'all know the motto. As the star turns, we'll come back here a month from now. I'm like, well, some things got out there, and hey, what's going on and everything else. But interesting point about the offensive coordinator, because they did get an offensive line coach here, right? They got him an offensive line coach in the building who has some ties not only to Mike McCarthy, but he has some ties to Tom Landry, even. Yeah, and when you hear Tom Landry, you say, well, how old is this gentleman?
He's 68, I think. He's almost 70. He's coached a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But, if we follow the breadcrumbs here a little bit, last coach offensive line in Seattle from 2018 to 2021, and who was offensive coordinator when he was the offensive line coach there? Brian Schottenheimer, B-Shot. And guess who's on this coaching in the building right now? B-Shot again. So I think now, granted, they've done a couple interviews. They're moving a little bit slower, taking their time here with the OC, especially now as Mike McCarthy's going to call the plays, but it feels like it's going to be Schottenheimer to me as a coordinator. We talked about it in the space when I was like, keep an eye on McAdoo. There's something there, but I think with this offensive line signing of Solis, I think that's who it's going to be. Who are you thinking?
No, listen. I know they weren't outside the realm, and the interview. What's his name? The offensive coordinator from the Ram, the Titans from the Ram, Nixon, and Brown from the Panthers and Rams. So they're doing their due diligence, they're doing their homework. But like I said, with Brian Schottenheimer, I wouldn't mind either because that's experience right there. He's been in his organization since last year. He knows the roster, he knows the players of who's going to stay. He's familiar with Mike McCarthy. On top of that, Cliff Kingsbury's name has been thrown around. I know he's in Thailand. I heard somewhere that Mike McCarthy may reach out to him. What I didn't know was Cliff Kingsbury was part of the Green Bay staff when McCarthy was over there. At one point, Andy Reid was the quarterbacks coach. So the familiarity, of anybody that we're talking about worked with Mike McCarthy. So again, I'm not surprised anybody who has been in Green Bay. But again, it's a big change. It's a nice change, and this could be an effective change that can help Dak Prescott elevate his game even more.
Yeah. Now some people not fans of that. And Mike Solari, by the way, I murdered his name a little while ago. My fault. I saw somebody post a Solaris about him. I told you a car, but Mike Solari is the offensive line coach. But now that's some of the knock on McCarthy though. He's hiring his buddies. He's getting the crew back together. But it does signify a change in this offense and what they're going to do because this is more of a zone scheme kind of blocking thing. What have you got a chance to take a look at today and see on old Mike? The other Mike, I should say now.
So, yeah, that was my immediate reaction when I saw this is a guy that coached McCarthy. I'm like, nepotism, here we go. Just calling up hey, what are you doing? You're just hanging out this summer and golfing? Cool. You want to come coach football with me? Come on down. I got you. Or, like parents of your son's 18, no experience at all. Perfect. I'll hire him to an executive level in the company. Come on down. That's what I expected was the case. But then I looked, and he actually didn't coach with him that long, and he's been in the NFL for literally decades and decades and decades. So he's not a Mike McCarthy guy. He's a guy that coached for Mike McCarthy, and there's a pretty big difference there. So when I saw that, it made me feel a little bit better. And then once I got that one off my head, I was like, yeah, but Seattle Seahawks, their offensive line's been really bad for the last 3 years. But then I look at his track record, and there were some things that the offensive line did well, and frankly, they didn't have a very good offensive line. So that kind of plays into what you're able to get from your guys too. So I don't think he's a guy that, forgot how to coach football. I did want to point out too, because my burner account, Samuel Rose, shout out to him, said he's younger than Philbin. I was the exact same way. I thought Philbin was like 97 years old.
Yeah.
He's 61. He's actually younger. He's like 2 years older than McCarthy and younger than this guy. So I don't know why. Maybe he just looks old. I know he's been around a long time, but apparently Philbin's younger than that. So this offensive line coach, I don't really have much for you. I'm not offensive line guy. I respect what they do, but I've never been the offensive line nuance guy, and I'm not going to pretend to be. So he's going to run a zone blocking concept. How that fits with the West Coast offense is a pretty good mesh. What he's going to offer this team and who he's going to be able to elevate and all that, I don't really know.
The one thing I kind of want to bring up, because they brought in Paul Alexander a few years ago when Garrett was still here and he implemented a zone blocking scheme, which the guys here hated it. It didn't work well, and they had to make the call and get him up out of there. The one thing I will say, in the time I was able to look at some stuff today on Mike Solari, is it is zone scheming, but it's a zone scheme with purpose. It's not. Paul was very what's the term I want to use? Because sometimes you think zone, you think it's not physical, right? And Paul kind of seemed not soft per se, but Paul wasn't as with purpose, if you will, as physical. And the one thing that I'll be able to take a look at here and there and listen to Mike Solari kind of talk is everything he's talking about is with purpose. And yeah, it's zone, but it's when you get there, you get there. It's not like, okay, well, zone here, get over here, clip. I mean, it's with purpose. Now, how does that translate? We got to wait and see, obviously. We're not sure what we're going to be able to do in that right tackle. We got to find out what's going on with Tyron Smith. But it's a lot about shifting and doubling and getting to the next level. So from what I got to see so far, I like what he's talking about. How's it going to work with the guys that we have here? I mean, that's like down in training camp and everything else and seeing what's going on. But I just want to bring it up for those that might remember Paul Alexander, going and knowing what Paul Alexander is and looking how Mike Solari coaches it. It's very different, though. I just want to be, even though they both kind of coach the same kind of scheme, but it's different, though, in their approach.
I have a question I have a question for both of you. If y'all don't mind. So, BJ, because you just said right now that you don't know how it's going to translate to guys for the running backs we have now, like Tony Pollard, who's not that physical. Can we say the running backs that Mike McCarthy coached in the past could be the type of back that he may be looking forward this offseason with free agency or draft?
Well, I mean, they had guys like Ahmad Green that weren't uberly physical, though. I mean, I know the Laces of the world and whatever. Starks, another one as well, when they won the Super Bowl, more of a physical guy. But, I mean, they had guys, I'm not prototypically Pollard. And here's the thing with the zone scheme, and finesse is what I meant for Paul Alexander. That was the word escaping me. A little bit more finesse with his zone blocking scheme than what Solari is. But to me, I think Pollard with his zone blocking scheme, I think takes his game to another level personally.
Yeah, no, I mean, when we say zone blocking scheme, for those that, like me, are not offensive line guys, you're like, well, what does that mean? Shanahan, that's what he runs.
There you go.
Andy Reid, that's what he runs.
There you go.
Like that's what these guys run in West Coast offenses a lot of time. There are some that are not zone blocking, but most of them are. So if you like some of the run philosophies of those two coaches, you can kind of mesh the West Coast offense with that zone blocking scheme here, and it should open up opportunity in lanes. But again, I don't know if it'll be Pollard or not, but if Pollard's back, yes, it should definitely open up some opportunities for him to have even more explosive runs.
And he'll have opportunity with a fullback in front of him and not like, Connor McGovern. So there's that too, for what it's worth. But again, going back into that, though, with him spending that 2018 to 21 with Schottenheimer, to me, kind of breadcrumbs me to that. So I'll spend the block on that
Stevie's
as well.
comment right there, if you want to touch on that.
What's great about Schottenheimer is everyone said he was great at making creative play schemes, but was awful at play calling, which should work out well with Big Mike actually calling the plays. That's very fair. Yeah, I mean, and again, with that guy being in the building now, Mike Solari, and what's going on here, I just think it's going to be Schottenheimer. I think it's just a matter of time is where I'm at. I felt like there was a chance that it could be McAdoo, but I haven't heard anything about it at all. I don't know if either one of you guys have heard anything. Do y'all think it's just pretty much formality for Brian Schottenheimer to be the guy, or do you still think there's a chance outside that somebody's going to take the OC spot?
Yeah,
I mean, based on what we originally heard, they said it was going to be somebody outside, and he was a consultant last year, so I don't know if he technically is an outside guy or not. I would look at that personally and say he's not an outside guy.
Right. And
so far, they haven't publicly interviewed anybody internally. It's been two outside guys. So I don't know. The tea leaves are there. It makes complete sense. I mean, Mike McCarthy brought him in for a reason. He has familiarity with the offensive line coach. Like, they've already coached together. So it would definitely make sense for him to be the guy, but I just feel like it might be somebody from the outside still. And maybe that's just wishful thinking, but I'm like, there's some guys out there like Bobby Slowick.
You heard today he's probably going to end up with in Houston with
they're interviewing, but that doesn't mean he's going to take the job, right? Like, there could be
That's true.
You could call him and say, hey, you don't even know who your quarterback is. You're assuming he's Bryce Young. What if somebody else trades up? Or there's some levels to that. But also, to be fair, if you're Bobby Slowick and you don't have experience as an offensive coordinator, but you're trending that direction, going with a guy who's also a rookie head coach is a good move for him because it kind of gives him a long leash. He's going to have 2 to 3 years unless everything goes completely south. Versus here where, like we talked about earlier, we all believe Mike McCarthy's back, but we don't know if he is. We don't know if Dan Quinn's going to be the next head coach if things go south and if DQ's going to want him or if he's going to want his own guy. So it's kind of a risky offensive coordinator move for anybody who is of that cloth, right? Who doesn't have experience. But somebody who's a veteran and has done it before, like Schottenheimer, for instance, it's not really as big of a risk because he's already bounced around the league a few times and he keeps getting opportunities. So he'll probably continue to get an opportunity after this. And he's getting a better roster than what he's had talent-wise in quite some time. So there's opportunities for him to do good things with this offense. But I just feel like it's somebody in the outside. I don't have a name. I don't.
Well, is somebody else on your wish list out of Slovak? Is there another wish list guy for you?
There is, yeah.
Okay.
So the guy that I'm still interested in, there's two actually, but one of the guys that I'm really interested in is Joe Brady for a number of reasons. Because if you look at the quarterbacks Joe Brady's coached and what he's been able to do with them, like he was with the Bills, he's coached Josh Allen. He was the coach for Joe Burrow in college. Like he's been around some good guys, so it'd be cool to have him on the staff. But also he was fired as OC for the Panthers, and that's kind of what you're going to get. But also you're giving him a lot better talent than what he's had before, so he'd be somebody on my list. Another coach that, and this one's the one that people maybe are not excited about based on how things went last year, but I still personally think Byron Leftwich is a good coach. He was a guy that a lot of people said is going to be the next hot head coaching candidate in 2021. He had an opportunity to take the Jags head coaching role before they gave it to Peterson, but he didn't want to join the team because the owner was insisting that the GM stay, and he didn't want to coach with that GM dynamic. So anyways, he ultimately backed out, or they decided to go with Peterson because Peterson didn't mind, and that worked out well for them. And then things did not work well for Byron because the Bucs had offensive line issues. They couldn't run the ball. He didn't even really try to run the ball later in the year. And also you're coaching Tom Brady, who's the de facto offensive coordinator, because he's the GOAT. So I do think with a team like us, he could be a good coach. But Joe Brady, Bobby Slowick, and him, and also Todd Monken, he's interviewing with the Bucs, right. Georgia Bulldogs offensive coordinator. He's coached for the Bucs previously in the NFL. The Titans were interested in him. I don't think the Cowboys are going to contact him because we haven't heard anything about that yet, but he would also be on my list.
Indeed. Spoonie, is there a guy outside the building that you'd like to see come in here at OC?
It's not going to happen if it was Cliff Kingsbury.
Oh, Cliff?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah. Where's he? He's over there in India or something.
He's in fire right now with Sagat from Street Fighter. Eating, having a good time and everything. So he's getting his score. He's still getting paid for the remaining of the 3 years. So I was researching that. I was like, damn, he doesn't stay retired. Come on, you're getting $5 million for the next 3 years. You're not coaching. So, but he's my guy on my wish list. But it's not gonna happen. I do agree with basically there's going to be in-house move from Brian Scheinheimer, even though they'll look outside. But listen, they interviewed 2 other guys, young guys who have done something to catch an eye. The coach from the Panthers, when Matt Rule was fired, he took over for a year. That was the same year that Cam Newton came back to the team, and he was solid. They love what he did with the running backs over there. And then you have a guy under McVay. Who I believe the Rams run a similar West Coast system, not like McCarthy all the way, but again, you got somebody with some knowledge there. So, I'm just happy that they go into a whole new different direction, something brand new, a different voice. And, I was looking at some highlights from Solaris, the offensive line coach. My God, he's a 5-year guy. So, I'm excited for where this team is going, and the front office has got to put the cherry on the top of the sundae.
Yeah. And the fact that they're taking their time and they're not just like automatically boom, 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 boom. They're moving with purpose, but at this point here, they're taking their time with this coordinator position. And I do like that side of it. I'm interested to see who the next interviewee is and what's going on from there. I feel like I don't think we're going to hear an OC. I don't think they're going to get an OC in this week. I feel like it's going to be next week, but we'll wait and see what happens there. Obviously, let me do it this way. So you still got to get a running back coach in here, right? Still got to get a quarterback coach in here. Do you think they'll make a move there on either spot before they get the OC, or do you think the OC is going to be the next chip to fall here in this offseason?
I think it'll be the OC. I won't be long-winded. I think you're going to have that person involved in the hiring for the quarterback and running back coach, because that's the position you don't need yet. You need the OC first, and then you can build off of that. So I think it'll be an OC.
10-4. 10-4. Well, I guess, defensively, as we're talking about some of the things that's going on offensively with some of these guys moving pieces and talking about having to add some wide receivers, just a little quick synopsis here. Probably got to get busy at cornerback as well. Jordan Lewis, injury this year, but you can save about, I think it's around $5 million if you do move on from him. So with Lewis coming back from the injury, you got the $5 to $6 million that you can save on the cap. Do you think he's going to be on the roster next year, or do you think they're going to move on? Spoonie?
Yeah, I think with Jordan Lewis, I will bring him back. He's a veteran guy. If your plan is to keep him in the slot and then move Blank outside, then yeah, that should be the move. But if you're still gonna have cornerback to draft, then you don't bring him back nor Brown back.
Oh, what do you think is going to happen with Jordan Lewis?
I mean, honestly, I could see a universe for the Cowboys where they keep Lewis and still draft a cornerback high. I think you're going to draft a cornerback high regardless. Anthony Brown, unfortunately, with the injury that he sustained, he's not coming back. There's basically no way that that's happening. But Jordan Lewis would be a guy I would consider, but knowing that Bland looked good at nickelback, I don't think it's really a huge priority. I'd rather just draft somebody. So for me, the cap space is probably more important than what he's able to provide, which is a shame because he ended his season and possibly his career at the Cowboys with a huge play against the Lions with the interception. So it's just kind of a shame the way the injuries happened with him and Brown both being hurt within like a 2 or 3 week span. But for me, I would probably move on and just look for drafting somebody anyways.
And of course, the hotbed that's been flown around Cowboys Nation is this here from our guy Gregory here in the chat. You know, on Instagram or whatever. This is the days and times we live in. Ramsey's like, if it's over, and there's a lot of smoke out there that maybe they're going to move on from Ramsey. All right, Cowboy, Professor Rowe, are you pulling the trigger for Ramsey? Are you trading? Are you getting some draft capital to go get Ramsey?
1 second, I'm pulling up his contract because that's gonna determine.
That's fair. How much? Yeah, how much money there?
All right, so it's opening up right now. Okay, cool. So his base salary for the next 3 years is 17, 14.5, and 15.5. So when you make a trade, all of the guaranteed money is absorbed by the team trading him. Mm-hmm. All the base salary is picked up by the team who's making the trade. So in this case, it'd be the Cowboys. So we would be on the hook for $17 million. Obviously, you could do some restructuring to move some of that into guaranteed money, but those cap hits, nah, I'm good.
All right, now, Spoonie, you pulling the trigger for Ramsey?
See, why you gotta ask me for? You guys know how crazy I can. You know what? Hold up a second. Steven, listen, Professor O just gave us the numbers. Make it work. There you go. Pull the trigger. Listen, hey, don't get me wrong. We have a responsibility. We have Michael Parker. Listen, gotta win before Michael Parker gets paid. He's going to be the highest paid player the highest paid defensive player in the league. But you know, with Ramsey, I keep it honest. If you can make the numbers work, that it doesn't affect your cap space that drastically, where it will hurt you from making other moves or signing your own. You got to do it. You have to do it. It has to be a way you have to do it. I'm sorry. You got to get Ramsey in here. I mean, Ramsey and Diggs, my God, that's a great tandem right there. That's a great start. Listen, you sign an OBJ and you get a Jalen Ramsey, I ain't saying nothing.
Load the clip. We got to put some chips in sooner or later, ladies and gentlemen. That's just, for those who've been a long time around these parts, I mean, me and Sweetie have pounded the table for many years, many a moon, if you will. When are they going to push the chips in? Now, I'm not saying Ramsey's the ultimate chip pusher there because I don't know. I'm sure. Let that have Ramsey. For me, it's not even about the money. And here's the thing for me, it's not even about the money because they can make it work. I'm not worried about the money. What are they going to ask for him? Because they gave up a lot to get him, right? Look, man, I'm not giving up a couple of firsts or so. Yeah, I mean, what are they going to ask for in return is really where I would be at on a trade. I'm open to trading for Ramsey. Look, you got a whole bunch of guys that crunch numbers. Make it work, Steven. I don't care. I don't want to hear the pie or nothing else. But it depends on what capital they want in return for Ramsey is realistically where I would have to draw the line and see what they were asking to make that happen. And plus, I'm trying to get out here and still get my guy Renfro out of the Raiders. I got to have some capital on the back end to go get my guy Renfro, a wide receiver from the Raiders.
Let me read you guys this really quick because this came from the Senior Bowl today. Jerry was talking a lot. There's a lot of sound bites from Jerry. But this one, I think, ties into the conversation. So I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to ask you guys based on what you hear, and you may have heard it already, but if not, I'm going to read it anyways. And let me know if this makes you think that this is the type of move Jerry is alluding to or not. So Jerry said, anybody who thinks I won't take a chance has misread the tea leaves. But I do think longer term, and I'm real hesitant to bet it all for a year. There's a lot of things that can happen for that year. In essence, we're seeing a couple of teams, the Eagles and Rams, that have had some real success putting it all out there and paying for it later. Don't think that doesn't pop in my head and get my eye as far as doing it, and I know how to do that. It's a part of what you put in the computer and what comes out. We'll see how it goes, but that's pretty impressive to have two teams in the last 2 years empty the bucket and get to the Super Bowl. But if you miss, it's a long go. On the other hand, my general experience has been that if you will stay aggressive, I'm talking whether it's on the field or off the field, but then pick your shots with the risk taking. And I've spent a lot of time in my life doing that. When they cut me open, it will be all those scars, heart attacks, and all those risks I took and have in the years I spent paying for them. My point is, I do know how to take risk. They're absolutely right. We have been in the middle here for a few years, and I would like where we are more. I'd like where we are right now more than in the middle. But given the opportunity, if it would make sense, I've definitely got some risk taking in me. So based on that, where he kind of, straddled the fence a little bit, do you think this is a move that he was talking about that he would make?
Man, that's snake oil. That's snake oil. That's just Jerry saying stuff. And he wanted to be honest, it's the last 3 years because the Bucs did the same damn thing before the other two. You've had 3 teams empty the bucket and go out here and get to Super Bowls. And by the way, the Bucs were good for multiple years after that. The Rams were good. Look, they got to 2 Super Bowls. They went all in, got the Super Bowl. Things went a little left this year, obviously. And you've seen Philly playoffs last year all the way here they are in the Super Bowl this year. Man, that's snake oil Jerry at his finest, man. Look, cool. That sounds good. No different than after the Cowboys lost the Green Bay game and Carson's out here talking. I was like, okay, there's a lot of talk. I like it. Show me. Okay, Jerry, that sounds great. Show me. And you haven't for over a decade as far as getting out of the draft and doing things, right? Outside of the draft. I mean, you made a trade for Amari Cooper because y'all screwed up with Dez. This year, y'all scrambled and you ended up with T.Y. Hilton and Hankins. Like, when have y'all pushed the chips in? So, it sounds great. And look, Jerry was probably that guy at one point. It always goes back to what I've said all this year, and I'll continue to say it. Let me know when Jerry's willing to step on Steven's toes, because he's shown the propensity not to do it. So unless he's really going to have that moment where as the story goes, Steven shoved Jerry against the wall and Deion Sanders, and he did it anyways. Let me know when Jerry's going to push Steven against the wall and say, "Get out my way, let me go do it." Now age might play into that or whatnot, but man, until I see it, I smell cap.
I agree, and I'm looking at some of the opportunities they had just last year, right? Last offseason, free agency came around, Bobby Wagner. He played for Dan Quinn. You need a linebacker. He could be that guy for you. Well, he cost a little bit more than we were looking for, so we talked to him and let him go. Trade deadline. You need a wide receiver.
Don't forget about Von Miller. Don't forget about Von Miller, too.
Von Miller, too. Yeah, another guy. Just cost more than we wanted. Weren't willing to risk it all for that guy. So not Bobby, not Von Miller. Then we get to the trade deadline. We all know we need a wide receiver. The whole world knows we need a wide receiver. We have a chance to get Brandon Cooks. They're asking for, a second and fourth or whatever the compensation was. But, we had the contract and you have the draft picks. We're not really, really willing to risk it for that one. So who is it? Who's the guy? So then you have Odell Beckham. Obviously, there's injury stuff there. And I know that adds a huge layer of risk into signing him or not signing him. But they were like, we like him, and he came in and we did the whole tour, but we weren't really willing to risk it for that guy either. So who are you willing to risk it all? Because Jerry just said, I've done it, all these scars from my body of risking it. When and who?
Odell Beckham, because he's healthy now. They'll sign him now.
Yeah, that's not risking it though. That's a
Steven's definitely risking. Not Jerry, but Steven going out here and getting Odell is going to be risking it. But it's a great question from an actual acquiring standpoint, though. Who is the guy? Because brother, me the whole week leading up, I was like, just go get Roquan, 2nd and 5th, go get him. I don't care, go get him, and. Nothing. So, if it's not a Roquan, look, you could have Jerry Jeudy for a 2nd and a 4th, too, as well. They didn't pull the trigger on Jeudy. It's a great question. Who is that guy? Is it Jalen Ramsey? But I'll whisper. Jalen Ramsey is the push over the top.
There's also the other angle. This stuff matters to Jerry Jones, or at least I think it does, more than people put into it. We had a chance to take Jalen Ramsey, and we bet on Zeke. If we now trade for Jalen Ramsey, it is the office kind of de facto admitting we made a mistake. We should have taken him, because now you're moving on from Zeke and trading for him. I just can't see that.
Right.
He's probably not the guy. Whether he would be a good fit for us or not, completely different, conversation. But will they actually go for him? I just can't imagine that.
Let's spin the block though. If we're talking about if we're into this realm from the Jerry Jones comment here, who's the guy? What about the Bucks? Bucks could be in rebuild mode. Just saying. Brady's gone. I don't know where they're going to end up being with Todd Bowles as the coach over there. Office coordinator's gone. Right? So things are happening. Is Mike Evans available? Is Mike Evans moving the needle? Is Godwin available? Are they? I'm not saying they're going to have a fire sale, but they're going to move on from some guys. Hey, maybe one of those last little lines, Levante David. I mean, are they moving a piece here or there and kind of recouping and doing some things? One of those guys, someone where Jerry's like, oh, Mike Evans or David, is that something that we're moving? I don't know. I mean, I think it has to be wide receiver, right? Because, again, I'm still standing by this from last year. I'm like, whenever they make a splash, prototypically throughout the history of the Cowboys, it's always, more times than not, it's about the wide receiver position than any of them. So, to me, to answer the question, if it is a guy, what if it's Stephon Diggs? That would be a splash.
Yeah. See now again. Tweeted last week. I said, Stephon Diggs for the Cowboys. I mean, let's keep it real. The Diggs brothers reunited. It would be a great thing. He fits what McCarthy is trying to do as far as offensively. Why not? I mean, don't get me wrong. It's perfect. Why? You don't need you're gonna pay Lamb. Lamb's your number one regardless. You're not going to go out there and get another number one receiver and whatnot. You're going to get somebody who's able to help us move the needle, like you were saying. So a guy like Diggs, that'd be great. That would be fantastic. And on top of that, that may make Trayvon Diggs negotiating even better.
Like, we got your brother, give us a hometown discount.
There you go.
But I mean,
that's family right there.
But again, I mean, if we're out into the stratosphere from O's question, they're like, who is the guy? If we go through who they didn't do anything at all, and I was just kind of cherry picking, going around. Well, Mike Evans, they got to sell. But I mean, if it's making a splash, it's going to move the needle. I mean, you're taking Stephon over Ramsey, right? That's where I would be for sure. Would they be willing to trade him? I'm not saying the Bills. Don't get it twisted. I'm not thinking he's on the market, or I'm not saying that. But just in the construct of, if Jerry's willing to make the deal, but he hasn't done the deal, who's the guy that would do it, right? I mean, DK Metcalf would that be a guy? I don't know, but I think Diggs kind of checks off all the boxes, though, right? But outside of Diggs, I don't know, man. Who do you think the guy is?
Hopkins, Arizona. I mean, he is 30.
See, I mean, Hopkins is cool, but I mean, Hopkins is 31. Is that really a swinging move? It helps for sure. Don't get it twisted. It helps, but I mean, how long does it help? Because the other thing he coded within that was, you make these moves. How long you're going to be viable. It's not about 1 year, whatever. How long Hopkins, and believing in Hopkins for him to be who he is. Being at 31. Oh, who do you think the guy is that would shatter the glass here? And Jerry Jones, Stone Cold Steve Austin walks out and throws down the draft picks and says, him.
I mean, it's a fun conversation. And Diggs, there's some reasons I think it makes sense for the Cowboys, right? So he's 29, Hopkins is 30. Diggs will turn 30 this year, Hopkins turned 31. So it's not a huge difference in age. It's only 1 year there. But Diggs' base salary, and if you remember, that's what the team that's trading for absorbs, is $7.9 million this year. So for the Cowboys, it would be easy to accommodate that. And then going forward, it's 18.5, 18, 19, and then 14.5. So he's under contract through 2027, which is also a little bit scary because that's a lot of contract. But again, you're only getting the base, so you can restructure that and do what you need to.
Right.
I don't think the Bills will trade him, and here's why. If the Bills trade him, they will have $37.5 million in dead money this year, and they'll be negative $17.2 million on the cap. If they wait till after June 1st, which would make the Cowboys less likely to make that move, it's $11.8 million in dead money and they would actually save 8.4. So he could be somebody that when we get closer to the season, maybe during the season, trade deadline, he could very well be moved in. I just can't imagine they move him before because that's going to just destroy their cap.
Right.
Hopkins, however, would save the Cardinals money by trading him prior to June 1st. So I think he'd be the more likely one to be moved. And I think from the Cowboys standpoint, I don't want to say he's a bigger name because you have the two Diggs brothers, and Diggs is very much so a wide receiver one in everybody's mind. But I think Hopkins, based on what you've seen production-wise, would be the bigger attention grabber for the Cowboys staff. And I think he would cost less. So I think he's the guy they'd be more willing to make a move because you're probably looking at a 2, maybe a 3 and a 5 or something like that to get him versus Diggs, who's going to be a 1+.
Right.
And I don't think they'll go then. And to be honest, I don't think they'll go in for either of those guys. I think the guy you mentioned earlier, Hunter Renfrow, is a lot more likely to be somebody they'd go after. But out of the two, I would say Hopkins and then Diggs based on the Bills being unlikely to trade Diggs based on his contract and what that will do to their cap situation. And they're going to ask for a lot more. And I don't think we'd go all in for that.
So
I don't think we're going all in again this year.
Okay, yeah. Well, I thought the question was who is the guy. I'm just trying to throw out who is the guy.
Looking at the names like Higgins, would you go all in for Higgins? I don't think the Cowboys would.
Ooh.
I like him. I don't think they would.
Yeah, he has a good sign though. Yeah, it's a good sign. I mean, this is my wish.
Right.
It's not going to
Pitts,
happen.
go all in for Pitts.
My wish that we were first round pick of Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, go all in for Pitts.
That's what I would love to do. Give a first to Kyle Pitts. He's not being utilized over there. Listen, you can use him as receiver / tight end. He has that physical ability. That's what I would go. But I tell you this, Michael Thomas.
Yeah, but does he got an ankle?
Healthy.
Does he have an ankle? I mean, is there an ankle even there anymore?
So Michael Thomas is the slant god, right? In a West Coast offense, it makes sense.
Sure. Bro, when's the last year he played?
He played last year for 3 games or something.
Yeah, I mean, I have no clue. But like I said, I don't even know he has an ankle. Like people talking about Dak Prescott's ankle and everything, on the radio and stuff like that. I'm like, I need photographic proof of Michael Thomas's ankle at this point, man, because it's. I just don't know. I mean, now he might be a guy that becomes available though via free agency. Maybe you bring him in for a little cup of tea. And see what that ankle looks like. I just don't think they're going to have to trade. I don't think nobody's going to trade for him. And how long are they going to hold on to him over there? So, I mean, that's not a big
Brandon
splash.
Cooks? We circled the wagon with that one. Now, he has an $18 million base salary. So, again, he's a guy, if you make that trade, assuming they don't cut him because they cut him. But if you make that trade, you're going to have to renegotiate that contract. And he'll be 30 this year. So, but he would cost less draft compensation wise in theory than the other guys.
Yeah, because they're not getting second now for him.
Yeah,
it would go down. So, I mean, that's something to revisit for sure. And they're going to have to. Ultimately, they're going to have to add somebody into this plus some where this wide receiver room's at. So, it's an interesting conversation to have. And, of course, we'll have a ton of these conversations, guys, as we're putting to bed Season 4 here on Pick 6 Sports. Man, we appreciate y'all for rocking with us all year. And don't worry, though. Don't worry. Season 5 is going to crank up, and we still will be doing the Freestyle Fridays, except it's going to start turning into live mock draft Fridays and kind of start delivering some content, draft content to you. We'll probably take a week or so sabbatical, but catch us on Twitter. Catch us over there what we're doing. We'll definitely update you as we flesh out our plans here for the offseason and what we got going on this side and get ready to crank up Season 5 for us and what we're doing here at Pick 6 Sports. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Professor O, Spoonie, as we're about to wrap up and put the end to this season. However, we're like ducks on a pond. They see us here, but as soon as we get out of here, we're doing this right here. Our legs are just moving, and we're going back and forth and looking at prospects and everything else. So, appreciate everybody that came through. Last word for you, gentlemen, as well. I'll start with our guy, O.
So, my last word is we have a lot of combine, pro days, college football stuff coming forward, which is exciting. For a reminder for those that are getting into the draft or have already been studying players, we have the Shrine Bowl tomorrow. So if you want to tune in, it's tomorrow.
Oh.
And then the Senior Bowl is this weekend. So there's some bowl game stuff coming up, which is exciting, and there's been a lot of cool practices. My name, I just want to throw out there super early. Really, really early. The wide receiver I think the Cowboys will sign this offseason is Juju. We looked at it last year. I think they're going to sign Juju this year.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
Juju on that beat? No, Juju on that beat. Okay, little
Okay.
Juju. I like on his way out the door, pointing, calling his shot on a guy that we're going to bring in via free agency. Spoonie, the last word for you to close out season 4.
Listen, man. It was a great season with you guys as always, man. Awesome. We had a great time. We had some crazy moments the way the team played, but great moments. And I'm telling everybody we're looking forward for another great off season. We got a lot of draft content coming out, a lot of things that we're gonna do, whether we go visit any place like the NFL draft or training camp. We're definitely gonna share our experience and knowledge for whatever we can gather to everyone here. And listen, we're a Cowboy family, and we all gonna just come together, conversate, have some fun, talk about the things that we want to do moving forward, X, Y, and Z, and hopefully, that one day comes that when you're gonna see a nice picture of us going to the parade, and we're gonna open the door, and you're gonna hear Professor O and BJ and Miss Mary come out and say, "Hey, Cowboy Nation, hop on in." And we're juggling, we're drinking, we're having a great time on the way, celebrating the next Super Bowl. So, like I said, this is a journey. This is a great thing. So enjoy, dominate, celebrate the off season.
That part. Here's a guy. Now here's a guy. This defensive tackle from Washington is a free agent. Go pay that guy. I'm just saying. Go get that guy in here. And then we ain't got to worry about drafting a defensive lineman this year. I'm tired of drafting them anyways. Just saying. But I do like Dexter Lawrence as well. Man, once again, appreciate y'all as always. The space will still be happening as well. The happy hour space and everything Friday will still be on board with that. Obviously, we'll deliver the content as things are coming out here with the coaching hirings and things that are happening. And like I said, just stay tuned and we'll update you on what and when we're kicking off season 5 and how we're going to move forward here throughout the offseason. Y'all be safe, especially those in the greater Dallas area with all this ice and everything. Definitely be safe. Appreciate y'all. And season 5 coming soon. Peace.